The Cold War wasn't fought only with missiles and tanks. It was fought with whispers, dossiers, and double lives. Germany sat at the center of that shadow war, where every glance across the Berlin Wall carried the weight of history. But here's the question. How did films and series capture that world of paranoia and betrayal? Stick around, because we're diving into 15 German spy thrillers that turned tension into unforgettable storytelling. People in the Net, 1959. The Cold War wasn't kind to ordinary men. In People in the Net, a West German classic, one small-town technician finds himself blackmailed into espionage. What begins as a simple mistake spirals into a nightmare of surveillance, fear, and betrayal. Imagine being trapped in a spider's web with no way out, every move watched, every word recorded. That's the film's mood, suffocating and razor-sharp. Released in 1959, this film nailed the early paranoia of a divided Germany. The story doesn't rely on action or explosions. Instead, it thrives on silence, the kind of silence where you can almost hear the wiretaps humming. It highlights how ordinary people were pulled into a game they never asked to play, a theme that would define German spy cinema for decades. Critics praised the film for its bleak realism. No glossy James Bond gadgets here, just dingy apartments, looming shadows, and the sense that at any moment your neighbor could be your enemy. It mirrored the collective anxiety of West Germans living next door to a communist state determined to infiltrate their lives. People in the Net set the stage for the German spy thriller genre, proving you didn't need flashy heroes, just the grim reality of survival in a world split in two. Watching it now feels like a time capsule of dread, showing how espionage wasn't glamorous. It was lonely, cold, and inescapable. Spy for Germany, 1956. A spy story where the hunter becomes the hunted. Spy for Germany takes us back to the immediate post-war period, when former Nazi agents were desperate to prove their worth in a new world order. The film follows a German spy sent to the United States to uncover secrets about America's nuclear program. Bold mission, right? But what unfolds is less about victory and more about the futility of espionage in a collapsing empire. The spy in question isn't portrayed as a slick mastermind. Instead, he's flawed, weary, and running out of road. His mission in New York City exposes not only the dangers of enemy territory, but also the unraveling of Germany's own place in the geopolitical game. The film dares to show a German spy grappling with irrelevance, because by the 1950s, the new Cold War wasn't about Nazi agents anymore. It was about superpowers locking horns over atomic firepower. What makes Spy for Germany stand out is its tragic undertone. You don't cheer for the spy, but you can't look away either. He's a man caught between past loyalties and a future that doesn't need him. That messy gray morality is what makes the movie so gripping. This wasn't propaganda, it was a confession. A cinematic acknowledgement that Germany had been reshaped and its agents, once feared, were now expendable pawns. In the process, the film captured the fragile mood of a country divided, still searching for its identity. No Way Back, 1953. Escape was never simple across the Iron Curtain. No Way Back follows an ex-Soviet officer trying to help a woman escape East Germany after the war. At first glance, it looks like a romance wrapped in espionage. But underneath, it's really about the impossibility of freedom when every step is monitored and every decision carries life or death stakes. Set against the backdrop of a still bleeding Europe, the film is one of the earliest to show Germany's fracture into East and West. Unlike Hollywood thrillers that leaned on car chases and glamorous disguises, No Way Back relies on dread. Each train station, border checkpoint, and quiet cafe feels like a trap. The danger isn't just soldiers with guns, it's the walls closing in. What makes it compelling is its focus on emotional tension. The ex-officer isn't just guiding a woman to safety, he's haunted by his past allegiances, caught between loyalty and redemption. It's the kind of Cold War story where everyone is compromised and trust is a luxury no one can afford. Released in 1953, the film struck a chord because audiences didn't have to imagine the stakes, they lived them. East Germans were already fleeing westward in risky attempts, and the film dramatized those stories with chilling realism. Watching it today, No Way Back feels like a stark reminder that during the Cold War, escape wasn't a triumph. It was survival with scars. For Eyes Only, 1963. East Germany had its own answer to James Bond, and it wasn't tuxedos and martinis. For Eyes Only was one of the GDR's most ambitious spy films, telling the story of a Stasi agent who infiltrates American intelligence to uncover a plot against the East. Forget Aston Martins and shaken cocktails. This is espionage grounded in the grit of socialist propaganda mixed with real tension. The film proudly positioned itself as the heroic tale of the East, outsmarting the decadent West. Its protagonist is calm, disciplined, and utterly loyal to his cause, the polar opposite of flashy Western spies. And yet, for all its ideological packaging, the film remains gripping because it captures how espionage felt in Berlin during the 1960s. Constant suspicion, coded messages, and the unspoken knowledge that one wrong step could cost your life. What makes For Eyes Only fascinating is how it doubles as a time capsule of East German pride. The Stasi agent isn't just fighting enemies. He's representing an entire system's survival. Watching it now, you can see the state narrative at work, but you can also feel the real tension underneath. The Cold War wasn't just about military standoffs. It was about who could control the story. And in this case, East German cinema tried to prove that its spies were every bit as clever as the CIA or MI6. Whether you buy into that or not, For Eyes Only stands tall as a rare glimpse of how the other side wanted to be seen. Wesler, 1985. Sometimes the most dangerous borders aren't physical, they're emotional. Wesler, translated as Wesler, East of the Wall, is a 1985 West German drama that blends forbidden love with the constant paranoia of espionage. On the surface, it tells the story of two young men, one from West Berlin, one from the East, who fall in love. But make no mistake, this isn't just a romance. It's a survival story in a world where spies, informants, and watchful authorities lurk around every corner. What makes Wesler remarkable is its realism. Large parts were shot guerrilla style in East Berlin without official permission, meaning the danger of the production itself mirrored the story being told. The tension bleeds into every frame. You can feel the eyes of the state on the characters, whether they're walking along Alexanderplatz or whispering in quiet apartments. While not a spy thriller in the traditional sense of coded drops and trenchcoat meetings, Wesler thrives on Cold War espionage themes. Every interaction is shadowed by the possibility of betrayal. Every visit across the border is a high-stakes gamble. The film makes the personal political, showing how even love became a potential crime when both German states treated human connection as intelligence currency. The ending doesn't offer neat closure because the reality of life divided by the wall never did. Instead, it lingers as a haunting reminder that during the Cold War, freedom wasn't only denied at checkpoints, it was denied in people's hearts. Wesler remains a daring piece of cinema that blurred art, politics, and the raw paranoia of life under surveillance. The Man Between, 1953. Berlin in the 1950s was the perfect stage for shadows. The Man Between, directed by Carol Reed, plunges viewers into a divided city where allegiances shift like smoke. Though a British production, the film was shot extensively in West and East Berlin, capturing the raw, unsettled atmosphere of a city already bracing for Cold War espionage. The story follows a young Englishwoman who visits Berlin and becomes entangled with Ivo Kern, a mysterious fixer played by James Mason. Kern isn't a clear-cut hero or villain. He's the kind of morally gray character Cold War thrillers thrived on. Is he working for the East, the West, himself? That's the brilliance of the film. You're never sure where loyalties truly lie. Shot only 8 years after the war, the city itself becomes a character. Streets still bear scars from bombings, and rubble lies next to neon-lit bars where secrets are traded. The atmosphere is tense, unpredictable, and very real because it was real. The production filmed in actual locations on both sides of Berlin, giving the movie a documentary-like immediacy. What makes The Man Between stand out is its ability to capture espionage before it became stylized. There are no suave agents or flashy gadgets here, just desperate people, navigating a city split by suspicion. It's the Cold War at ground zero, when Berlin was still forming its role as the epicenter of East-West conflict. Decades later, The Man Between feels like an eerie premonition of the decades of spy thrillers that would follow. It showed early on that espionage wasn't glamorous, it was messy, risky, and soaked in moral ambiguity. 17 Moments of Spring, 1973. 12 episodes of pure tension, and every minute counts. 17 Moments of Spring, though Soviet-made, became hugely popular in East Germany because of its portrayal of the perfect deep-cover spy. The story follows Stierlitz, a Soviet agent operating in Nazi Germany during the final months of the war, but its resonance carried directly into the Cold War climate of the 1970s. Why? Because it offered an idealized vision of espionage, calm, intelligent, and endlessly loyal to the state. Unlike the morally torn spies of Western thrillers, Stierlitz never falters. He's ice-cold under interrogation, meticulous in his cover, and revered as the ultimate patriot. The series made him a cultural icon across the Eastern Bloc, including East Germany, where real Stasi officers reportedly used episodes as both inspiration and informal training material. Every scene drips with paranoia. Stierlitz never relaxes. The Gestapo lurks behind every door. The show thrives on small gestures, an overheard word, a suspicious glance, a dossier left too long on a desk. The tension isn't in shootouts, but in whether Stierlitz can keep his identity intact for one more day. For audiences in East Germany, 17 Moments of Spring doubled as propaganda and entertainment. It reassured viewers that their side had heroes as capable as any Western spy. At the same time, it reflected the reality of living under surveillance. Everyone watching, everyone reporting, everyone pretending. To this day, the series remains one of the most famous spy dramas ever aired in the Eastern Bloc. It wasn't flashy, but it didn't need to be. The thrill was in the silence, the shadows, and the constant threat of discovery. The Looking Glass War, 1970. When amateurs are sent to play the deadliest game of all, The Looking Glass War, adapted from another John le Carré novel, may not be German-made, but its DNA is steeped in the tension of East and West Germany. The plot follows a group of inexperienced British operatives sent on a mission across the border into East Germany, tasked with gathering intelligence on Soviet missile sites. The catch? They're completely out of their depth. Unlike the polished professionalism of Liama's in The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, these operatives are clumsy, nervous, and disastrously unprepared. The mission unfolds less like a sleek spy thriller and more like a slow-motion tragedy. Every mistake feels inevitable, and every misstep drives home the futility of sending men into a world where one wrong word could cost their lives. The film captures the grim absurdity of the Cold War. Bureaucrats in London drafting brilliant plans while agents on the ground bleed and stumble through hostile territory. It's espionage as a machine that eats its own. For audiences familiar with the divided Germany, the setting rang uncomfortably true. Checkpoints, border patrols, and the constant fear of discovery weren't fiction, they were lived reality. The film dared to show espionage as farce, a series of fatal blunders wrapped in official arrogance. Though overshadowed by other Cold War classics, The Looking Glass. War stands out for its unflinching cynicism. It's a reminder that not every spy story is about glory. Some are about being crushed between history's gears. Funeral in Berlin, 1966. Cold War. Berlin wasn't just divided, it was crawling with double agents. Funeral in Berlin, based on Len Deighton's novel, throws us straight into the murky world of shifting allegiances. Starring Michael Caine as the sardonic British agent Harry Palmer, the story unfolds against the stark backdrop of the wall, where no one is quite what they seem, and every handshake hides a dagger. The premise? Palmer is dispatched to Berlin to oversee the defection of a high-ranking Soviet officer. Simple on paper, impossible in practice. As he navigates black markets, grim checkpoints, and backroom deals, Palmer realizes that defectors aren't always what they claim to be, and allies have their own hidden agendas. In Cold War Berlin, betrayal wasn't the exception, it was the currency. Shot on location, the film oozes authenticity. You can practically feel the chill of winter air cutting through the Brandenburg Gate, the claustrophobia of backstreets where informants traded secrets, and the ever-present sense that someone is tailing you just out of sight. Unlike glamorous spy flicks of the era, Funeral in Berlin strips espionage down to its grit, bureaucracy, cynicism, and the constant threat of a deal going sideways. Kane's Harry Palmer is the anti-Bond, cynical, working class, and unimpressed with authority. His dry wit cuts through the tension, but make no mistake, the stakes are deadly serious. One wrong call in Berlin, and you're not just out of a job, you're out of a life. Funeral in Berlin captures Cold War espionage at its most cynical, showing that in a divided city, truth was always negotiable, and loyalty was a luxury no one could afford. The Lives of Others, 2006. What happens when the watcher starts to care? The Lives of Others isn't a traditional spy thriller filled with chase scenes and coded messages, but it's arguably one of the most chilling depictions of Cold War espionage. The story follows Wesler, a loyal Stasi officer assigned to monitor a playwright and his partner in 1980s East Berlin. His job is to gather evidence that could ruin their lives, but the longer he listens, the more human they become to him. The film thrives on silence, the scratch of a pen in a surveillance log, the faint static of a hidden microphone, the creak of a chair as Wesler listens in. It captures the suffocating reality of a state where art, love, and even casual conversations could be criminalized. And while most spy thrillers focus on the adrenaline of the mission, this one digs into the corrosive effect of constant observation, on both the observed and the observer. Winning the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film, The Lives of Others resonated worldwide because it stripped espionage down to its most devastating form: listening. Wesler's slow transformation from cold enforcer to reluctant protector is both heartbreaking and hopeful. It's proof that the Cold War wasn't just fought across borders. It was fought inside apartments, inside minds, and inside the souls of those ordered to destroy lives in the name of loyalty. Black Book, 2006. When survival itself becomes espionage. Paul Verhoeven's Black Book is technically a Dutch-German co-production set during the final months of World War II, but its shadow loomed heavily over Cold War Germany. It follows Rachel Stein, a Jewish singer who becomes a spy for the resistance, infiltrating the Nazi elite. While it predates the Cold War, its themes of betrayal, double identities, and the cost of trust made it resonate in divided Germany decades later. What sets Black Book apart is its willingness to show espionage as personal. Rachel doesn't just gather intelligence, she risks her life every second, blending into the enemy's inner circle while concealing her real mission. Every choice carries consequences, and every alliance could turn deadly. By the time of its release, audiences in Germany saw it not just as a World War II drama, but as a reflection of what Cold War espionage demanded: constant reinvention, moral compromise, and nerves of steel. Its gritty realism connected with viewers who knew that those qualities didn't vanish after 1945. They became the currency of survival in a divided Europe. Black Book is an espionage story wrapped in tragedy, a reminder that war didn't end when the guns stopped. It shifted into whispers, betrayals, and coded exchanges that carried directly into the Cold War era. The Quiller Memorandum, 1966. Berlin at midnight, paranoia at every corner. The Quiller Memorandum, adapted from the novel by Adam Hall, is one of the most underrated Cold War spy thrillers set in Germany. Filmed on location in West Berlin, the movie plunges into a city still healing from World War II, while already trapped in Cold War espionage. George Siegel stars as Quiller, an American agent tasked with infiltrating a neo-Nazi network operating under the shadow of East-West rivalry. The brilliance of Quiller lies in its tone. Unlike Bond films of the 1960s, this one doesn't dazzle with gadgets. Instead, it thrives on tension, coded exchanges, and the creeping sense that Quiller is always one step behind his enemies. The narrative unfolds in cafes, deserted streets, and sterile offices, ordinary settings that suddenly feel dangerous when you know anyone might be watching. Berlin itself becomes the perfect stage. Bombed-out ruins stand next to new modernist buildings, mirroring the clash of past and future that defined Cold War Germany. And beneath it all runs the question: what loyalties survive in a city carved in two? It's cynical, slow-burning, and deeply atmospheric. For audiences, the Quiller memorandum proved that German spy thrillers didn't need flash. They needed shadows, whispers, and the uneasy silence of divided Berlin nights. Assignment: Berlin, 1982. A city split in half makes for the perfect spy playground. Assignment: Berlin. A TV miniseries from the early 1980s, drops viewers into the tense reality of divided Germany. The story follows a group of intelligence agents navigating the shifting sands of East and West Berlin, where every mission could unravel not just careers, but international stability. Unlike big-budget Cold War films, Assignment: Berlin thrived on its detail. Border crossings, coded telephone calls, safe houses. It meticulously recreated the day-to-day mechanics of espionage. Watching it felt less like a glossy thriller and more like a dossier come alive. Every character had layers. Informants weren't just informants, and even allies might sell you out when pressure mounted. What makes this series unforgettable is its willingness to show the grind. Spying wasn't glamorous, it was exhausting. Endless surveillance shifts, late-night meetings in smoke-filled bars, and the constant gnawing fear of being tailed defined the profession. That commitment to realism gave Assignment: Berlin a raw authenticity that set it apart from other shows of the era. For German and international audiences alike, the series drove home one truth. In Berlin, 1982, espionage wasn't the stuff of escapist fantasy. It was a lived reality, with very real consequences. The Odessa File, 1974. The ghosts of the past don't stay buried. They become weapons in the Cold War. The Odessa File, based on Frederick Forsyth's novel, isn't a straightforward East versus West spy story, but it digs into a uniquely German truth: that the Cold War couldn't escape the shadow of World War II. The plot follows a German journalist who stumbles onto a secret organization of former SS officers, Odessa, working to rebuild influence and shield war criminals. As he digs deeper, his investigation spirals into something resembling espionage, coded messages, double agents, and deadly traps, all against the backdrop of a Germany still divided and haunted by its past. What makes the Odessa File crucial to Cold War spy cinema is how it ties old wounds to new tensions. West German institutions feared infiltration, while East German propaganda thrived on exposing Nazi legacies. The journalist's dangerous quest reflects both realities: the ongoing fight over Germany's moral identity and the global chess game of espionage. Shot on German locations, the film brims with authenticity. Dark alleys, tense confrontations, and a constant air of suspicion echo the spy thrillers of the period. But the twist is that the enemy isn't just foreign, it's buried within Germany itself. For audiences in the 1970s, the Odessa File was both thrilling and unnerving. It reminded them that the Cold War wasn't just about nuclear missiles and spies across borders. It was also about unfinished business from a darker past that still had the power to destabilize the present. Cold War Germany was more than a battleground of armies. It was a theater of shadows. These films and series show that espionage wasn't about glamorous gadgets, but about lies, betrayals, and the weight of history pressing down on every choice. From smoky cafes in Berlin to dossiers locked in government vaults, the stories still pulse with relevance. Which one grabbed you most? Comment below, subscribe for more deep dives, and remember, truth was always the most dangerous weapon.